Oh yeah, welcome to that bonus episode of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is My Passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we celebrate permaculture, preparedness, and practical living. Well, before we get hopping into it, y'all, we got to cover what we always do because there are people that make this show possible. Right at the top of the list, Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com. Turn that simp into a pimp. Bam! Also, Heaven's Harvest, y'all, 10% off with promo code PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. You want to make sure you get that stuff for all of your preparedness needs. Now, do not forget, we've told you how to put back all your dry goods, how to grow your food. We do that on the YouTube channel. We even do it somewhat here on the Pimpcast. But for anything that you can't procure yourself, go check them out. All their seeds are batting 1,000 down there in the high tunnel, so go check them out. $50 off from EMP Shield with promo code PERMA. Remember, your most devastating threat 9 times out of 10 is going to be lightning. If you doubt me, ask my next guests who live right in the middle of Tornado Alley. We'll get to them in a minute. But if you want EMP Shield, y'all, $50 off with promo code PERMA, and it is a fantastic lightning arrestor. Remember, if it hits anything downstream, 25 G's is what they're going to cover. And finally, Harvest Right, excuse me. Yeah, we got a link for that down below, so don't forget to check it out. And if you want to tip a pimp, go check us out on the Fountain app. You can listen to all your podcasts over there. Okay, y'all, I'm not going to mess around because I want to get straight into it. I'll be honest with y'all, I've been kind of a creepy fan of my next guest coming up because we have a whole lot of overlap. And the cool thing is they are doing what so many people out there ask me how to do. And we're going to cover a lot of that today and probably in a number of other things. With that said, we're talking to the Texas boys, but apparently we have a Texas boy and a Texas girl. And for those out there, don't get it twisted. This is a real woman. We're not talking to anybody in Asheville. They're actually in Texas. So men actually have testosterone. I got a glimpse of their son a moment ago, and I knew that he was not from Asheville, North Carolina, because the boy, he was as hard as woodpecker lips. I'm telling you, he had some guns on him. So, yeah, with that said, we're going to get right into it. So how are y'all doing, TD and Faith?
Hey, Billy, we are excited to be on because I myself, since you reached out to me, I've been binging on your podcast, and it's been very edifying and enjoyable. And so I, much like you, have been a little bit of a cyber stalker. So.
Yes, it's all I've heard about for about at least a week now, I think, since y'all talked. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real joy. I got to be honest with you because there were certain things watching your videos that I could kind of read between the lines. I was like, heard y'all say something in an interview, and it made me think that you might be from, and when I hear your accent, which you seem to be losing over time, I was like, I bet they're not far from where I came from. Now, we're not going to, I know you're in an undisclosed location for reasons of security, so we won't disclose any of that. And we'll only go as far as you want, but every single hero out there has an origin story, and you two are, I'll be honest with you, folks, they are heroes of mine because I wrote to them. As many of you know, we've been rather suppressed on YouTube, and just because you do the right thing doesn't mean you're going to keep your job, okay?
Right.
And I knew by their numbers what I was able to ascertain that they were very suppressed on YouTube. And I'm thinking, got to be a reason for that. And then when I listened to their content, the first episode, I'm like, okay, so they're speaking truth to power, and they're doing it unapologetically. Immediately in this YouTube space, I'll be honest with you, I felt very less alone. And I think I wrote that to you when I reached out to you the first time.
Yeah.
So please tell us, give us a little bit about y'all's background and what brought you to this work.
Well, we were two kids that grew up in government schools, so we were Prussian educated by the government, and we both grew up in neighborhoods, and little did we know we grew up a couple miles from each other.
Right. We grew up in the poorest county in the state that we lived in.
Yep. And so we met in community college, and I went to college for 7 years. I went to seminary. I did all that stuff, and we met in community college. we got married in college, and then we started our life. We did not like. We grew up in the Northeast, and it is very oppressive. It's fiscally and financially oppressive. Everything is incredibly expensive. The cost of living is very expensive, and I originally started out. I was a financial planner, and I was a junior partner in a firm for 11 years, and I learned a lot about finance. I learned a lot about shenanigans and Ponzi schemes and manipulation and all these things. And by learning these things in real time, I started to question a lot of things. And that's what I went to college for. I went for business and finance, and I disagreed with all my professors. And so I continued in that field until I got pushed out of that field.
Right. The market collapsed, and we were having our third baby in 3 years. And he literally pulled in the driveway with a box, like, you know, you would see in a movie, you know, he had a little cardboard box with his office things. And I looked out the window and I said, oh, this can't be good. And we were having the baby. Was it the next day? I think the next day.
Yeah, it was that week.
I went into labor,
Yeah.
and it was funny because the midwife was saying, you know, so what does your husband do for work? You know, I'm there in
Good
labor.
question.
And so that's interesting because, yesterday things kind of ended. So, but that was 2006.
Was that 08?
That was in 07.
No, you're right.
Was that 08?
That was 08.
Yeah,
yes.
that was 08.
Yes,
Yep.
that was
Yeah.
08. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It wasn't hard for me to guess because honestly, same thing happened for me. The only jobs I could find in what I did was in third world countries. Dead
Wow.
serious.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it looked like we had the same exact thing, but far more consequential because you had a baby on the way. Good
Yeah,
night.
Yeah.
We had 3 little ones, and at that time I said, well, I can't go back to work. I mean, I had 3 little babies, and it's just the way that it worked out by the grace of God,
Yeah.
through church. It was like he met this guy that wanted him to manage his investments. So he kind of like tried that, worked from home for a year, managing investments.
I
for
day
this
traded
guy.
for a year.
Yeah.
Managing investments was being kind.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this guy was a mega gambler. So that relationship didn't work out too well. But that kind of pushed me into the construction world. And I grew up, my dad was a general contractor, so I had just a little bit of experience. And the one thing that I did as a child growing up that kind of molded and formed the way that we raise our children is I neglected and forsook kind of all the opportunity that I had as a child by learning from my father, because my dad could do electric, plumbing, welding, stick framing. He could do all these things, and I was much more content handing him tools, but I didn't have the desire to learn how to do it because I was going to be smarter and I was going to go to school and get a good education so that I could get a good job, you know.
Yeah.
And so I did all that, and as God would have it, here I am, 11 years removed from college and now in the construction field. And I was like, wow, I wish I would have paid attention when I was a kid and my dad was trying to teach me all this stuff. Now I'm going to have to learn it the hard way. And so started a construction company, managed a construction company, moved out, started my own construction company. We did very well. While we were working in construction as a GC, a straight line winds hit in 2012, and it created the power. There was a large scale power outage that affected hundreds of thousands of people. I would say 300,000, something like that. And the power was out for like 8 days. Well, this was the event where all these different various gas stations were without power. Well, it created a frenzy. And while experiencing this frenzy, when I came home that day, it was a Saturday, we were working, because when I owned my construction company, it owned me. I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and I saw everybody when I worked out of the house, but you know, it owned me. So when I came back to the house that day, I said, you know what, I'm like, people here are nuts, and they have no concept of being prepared for anything. And we had met some really awesome friends in our homeschool group, and so we were, you know,
prepping. We had been prepping since our first one was born. Basically, we were just honing our skills,
honing our prepping skills.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, you know, we should really consider relocating because all the laws are against us, the taxes are against us, the regulations against us. Right. Everybody here is relatively nuts. Everybody here is like angry and mad. And, you know, when we would travel and we would go south or even north to Maine, like people wave. And it's like so peculiar when you're from the Northeast. So like, wow, why is everybody so nice? You know, and people will hold the door for you. You know, you get some of that Southern hospitality.
Yeah, they just weren't so rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's much more laid back. So 2012, we really started talking about this. Well, where do we want to go? You know? And so we started researching homeschool laws and Second Amendment laws, and we knew that we wanted to move to a warmer climate so we'd have a longer growing season. And at this time, we had a small garden and a couple goats and some chickens.
Yep, we have been doing dairy goats.
And some miniature horses.
Chickens,
yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And but we knew we wanted a longer growing season, but really we had never really grown that much. I certainly had never grown a fruit tree or anything like that.
Although it was very easy to grow a garden up there.
Yes. Yeah. It was very easy.
We don't have those big Texas weeds. Like
and we had lots of rain, and
yes, yeah.
So it was a totally different experience. So 12 hits, we start thinking about this to make this decision. Then Superstorm Sandy wrecks the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And being in construction, it sent my construction company to the next level. I had a banner year, and right after all that work, things really slowed down and almost stopped. And so we looked at each other, and I'm like, you know what? We got a little bit of cash. We should probably plan our exit strategy. Mm-hmm. And so that was in the beginning of 2014.
And that was the hand of the Lord, because your construction business was so successful. He had taken it from just a nothing business, like totally bankrupt business, to a very successful business. And we always talked about moving, but you kept saying year after year, you're like, it just makes no sense to walk away from this. Like, why would I walk away from making this much money? I mean, yeah, it's a lot of hours, but I mean, you are providing a very good livelihood for me and the three boys. And, you know, it would be foolish to walk away from it, is what you kept saying.
Yeah.
So you're like, if it ever stops, we're going to move. And I thought, it ain't ever going to stop. Are you kidding me? Like, you know, and sure enough, that fall came.
It did.
And September, and it stopped.
It stopped.
Like the phone stopped ringing. Yeah. It just stopped.
And I never advertised. That previous year we did $2 million, and that was just all by myself. I didn't have a secretary. I had a couple of employees, but I did accounts payable, accounts receivable. I did the estimates. I managed the job sites, and but yeah, it came to a screeching halt. And because of where we were and the timing, and the real estate market was where we were was like kind of suppressed. So we tried to sell our house, we couldn't sell it. Mm-hmm. So then we made so I had an 816 credit score.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we had just paid off the house. We had totally redone the house inside and paid it off.
You said unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we didn't. We still owed on the house.
A little tiny bit. That little equity loan that we owed. But the rest was all the way paid off, and it was all fixed up and done inside.
Well, not quite. You're not quite remembering that right. Okay. We still owed it. We originally owed $315, We paid it down because I did a lot of real estate investing. We did very well in real estate. So we did the classical thing where you refi, pull out equity, put it, and we would buy different properties. That's the only reason we owed any money on our house, because it would have been paid off.
Right. Okay.
So we had this smaller outstanding loan. We could not sell the house. And I said, you know what? We're doing it anyway. We're going, right? So we're going to leave. So we let them foreclose on the house. I'm just like,
That's crazy.
Brand new heating, brand new flooring, all brand new appliances.
Well, we were really pushed into a corner because what happened was September, the phone was not ringing. October, November, December, not one phone call.
Yep.
And what happened was we were paying all the employees, all the insurance, everything out of savings. And you talked to your friend who was an attorney, and you were like, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't just continue to keep doing this. All of our money's going to be gone. Like all of our savings, everything's going to be gone. We're just floating this business.
And it went fast. And that was the amazing thing. This is what we talk about, strategic relocation and different things. I mean, when we moved, our cost of living literally was cut well into below a third.
Yeah.
Our cost of living up north, it was just incredible. Like the amount of money you need to make to just exist, let alone save for the future, let alone build a legacy for your family and your children. So we cut the cord and we said, gotta go. And there was all kind of great Obama programs where you can keep your house and we'll shrink your mortgage by 2/3. And I said, look, man, I'm not interested because I ain't ever coming back.
Right, you can
they
just handed it over to the bank.
Yeah, they did all this crazy. They was going to wheel and deal and do all this stuff, and I said, no, man, I'm not interested. I'm not coming back. And I'm like, there's no future. I'm like, my children have no future here. They wouldn't have the ability to buy land or anything. So the house stayed in foreclosure for 4 years, and we drove on down to Texas with a 12x8 one-way U-Haul. So
full of food and preps.
Full of Home Depot 5-gallon buckets and 2 mattresses, no furniture.
No furniture. A couple toys. I had like prioritized, I think it was like Legos, maybe some little Matchbox cars, some blocks. Like it was like 2 or 3 things they had, and that was it.
And we did a speed drill. So we decided, we said, we're doing it, right? Because I'm like the steady Eddie guy, right? And I'm just like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to work every day and I'm going to outwork everybody and I'm going to work hard and I'm going to keep my head down and I'm just going to keep doing it.
Yeah,
and if there's a brick wall, I'll just keep smashing my head into the brick wall till I break the brick wall. Yeah. And by the grace of God, for whatever reason, I was like, no, we have to do this and we have to do this now. And so we took blue masking tape in the back living room. We had a really big house. And we put an 8x12 block on the floor. And I said, babe, whatever fits in that box is what goes, and whatever don't stays. And so we filled that box. We transported that box into the one-way U-Haul, and we headed down here. We had never been to Texas, didn't know anybody in Texas.
We had never been west of Pennsylvania.
We figured, as a matter of fact, the December before we moved, we visited friends in Ohio and Indiana.
Yes. So that was our, things were still at a total halt with the business. And then we had friends in Ohio, friends in Indiana. They said, come and visit. Maybe, they could convince us to move, especially the Indiana tribe. They really, really wanted us. And we're like, it would make total sense to move to Indiana. But we were there. We spent like a week with them. And we were like, I don't think so. I think it's Texas.
Still too cold.
Yeah, it's really cold here. So, yeah.
So we were laying in bed at our friend's house. We were going to leave the next day, and Faith was like, don't you think we should just at least drive down to Texas to see what it's like? And I'm like, we're going to drive like 10 hours south to do what? To go where? To look at what? Like, we don't even know what we're doing. So we drove back home, and and I said, look, here's what I want to do. I said, I want to be far enough away from the border. And so that's how we kind of strategically picked Northeast Texas. I want it to be green. I want it to get a decent amount of rainfall. I want there to be a slight change this season. So, because everybody says, why did you pick here? And I mean, it was all these like different minor factors. And we found 2 rentals on Craigslist from 2,000 miles away, and we got our one-way U-Haul, and we headed for the first rental, and we got down here, and it was kind of surreal. You know, you come over the Red River, you're just like, wow. You know, it's like the land of opportunity, and we're here, you know. Yeah. And we drove to Hallsville. I don't know if you've ever been to Hallsville, but we drove to Hallsville, which is real close to Marshall. So if that tells you anything, and we checked out a rental, and it was kind of scary.
Yeah,
you know,
it was
kind of like
the area was really sketchy.
I was expecting somebody to jump out of the woods plucking a banjo or something like.
Yeah. But the people were really sweet, and they like offered us furniture and stuff too, and
very nice people.
Real sweet, yeah.
But you know, like, do we really want to raise our kids here?
A little sketchy, yeah.
And so then we had two options. So we're like, well, I guess it's the other place.
Drive to the second place.
So we headed towards the other rental. And we start driving. We're like, oh, man, this is kind of great. And we're driving past all these pastures and all these Longhorn and Angus and Bremer and all these cows.
Yeah.
And
we moved to a Mormon community. We had no idea. We just unknowingly picked a rental house in a Mormon community. And, of course, if you know anything about Mormons, they are prepped. I mean, they're ready to go.
That's not necessarily a bad place to be because Mormons have at least a year of food around them, you know?
That's right.
So we found this little tiny country house, probably 1,200 square feet. And you got to weave through two cattle pastures and go down this dirt driveway. And we got there, and it was old and outdated. And I was like, I think this is the place.
Yeah, the boys, as soon as we pulled down the driveway, they were like, this is it, this is it. So they were 9, 7, and 6 when we moved down here. And they were really excited to come to Texas. That's all they knew, you know. So yeah, and then our landlord, he was probably about 90 then.
Yeah,
and
at least.
Real big, tall Texas guy. And he said, do you mind me asking what y'all have in those buckets? And I said, it's just food. Don't worry. It's just food, you know, nothing strange. And he's like, are you Mormon by any chance? I don't know if he said Mormon, but he said like, what would they say? Latter-day Saints or whatever, you know? And I said, no, sir, we're not. We're just, you know, preppers, you know? And he said, okay, all right, you know, but he said, when would you like to move in? And we're like, well,
right now.
Today's good, you know? We had the trailer right there.
We don't have anywhere to go. Yeah. We don't have any options.
So we said, okay. I mean, it hadn't even been cleaned out from the last tenant. There was a cat living inside there. I said, don't worry about it. We'll clean it.
I'm like, don't worry about it. It's great.
We'll get it. Yeah. So we had a little plastic fold-in table, and I did have a piece of fabric we used as a tablecloth. So we threw that over top of it, and he had some old chairs, and his wife had just passed away. So he showed us his garage, and he said, whatever you need in here of this furniture, you're welcome to use it. So, I mean, the first night we had like a couch.
Yeah.
And 2 like sitting chairs in the living room. Like
it was very
old
surreal.
People sitting chairs, you know, old school with the big arms.
Yeah, and then you know, we were here for a couple years, and every morning you put your head back on your pillow, you know, and you're like, wow, is this real? Like, we're here.
Well, our life just went from so rushed and so fast-paced to, and such a high overhead that you were just spinning your wheels every single month just trying to pay the overhead for the business and everything. And then it just went to like, okay, well, we got $100. So you'll go to Walmart, and whatever you come back with, we'll be happy. We'll make food for the week, and we can go on a walk in the evenings with the kids. And
I made 2 decisions. I said, if we're going to do this and we're going to radically change and make these extreme radical decisions, there's 2 things we're going to do. One, I'm not going to work 6 days a week anymore. I want more time for the family, so that's a definite. And 2, even though you have a college degree and she could make really good money and did in the past make really good money, I was like, I'm making the decision that you are not going to work outside the home. We're not going to do that. However we have to struggle and scrape by or whatever we have to do, that's what we're going to do. And as God would have it, I just kept trying to hustle to find the job, and I kind of had like a loose referral to a construction company, and I had two other potential jobs lined out. One with McCoy Building Supply, and one with a large commercial roofer in the area. I had already given them my resume, and they're like, "Oh man, this looks great," and everything. And McCoy said, "Oh, well, we want you to join our managerial training program, and you might have to like drive a lot." And I'm like, "Man, I'm not interested in that." And this other company said everything looks great, but they wouldn't call me back. So God opened a door, and I got hired on kind of as like an utility guy at a construction company. And I worked my way into a senior sales position. And my first year, I made $33,000, and we had 3 kids. And wife stayed home.
And we ate all of our preps.
And we ate all our preps. Yeah, we literally ate from our buckets. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I still have the little original list, and I would write down like all the creative ways that I could make beans and rice and like, you know, canned pineapple, like desserts and like just whatever. Just, I mean, we were just living off the preps basically.
Yeah, and there's a testimony for being prepared. You know, we're not talking about earthquakes or polar shifts or whatever. I mean, just being prepared for, you know, anything that can, lots of things can happen in life. But I went from 30,000 to 70,000 to 6 figures to, you know, just continued to work hard. And God just blessed it. And, you know, we stuck to our core values and what we knew to be true. And we knew that. And then as God would have it, he blessed us with 3 more kids. Yeah. We didn't even think that was even a possibility, you know. And I almost feel, you know, not quite like Job, but he doubled, you know, we doubled up. And so it's been a great adventure. We don't regret anything. If I regretted anything, maybe it would be not leaving sooner, and moving sooner. But, you know, God has a reason for everything. And so we moved here. It took us about 9 months to find our home that we're in now. And we bought a fixer-upper for cash. And
it was ugly.
And it was ugly.
It was
but
really
I called
ugly.
it ghetto camouflage because, see, I'm like, I really don't think we should fix up the outside because, you know, keep everybody guessing.
It was like, yeah, like a sunny yellow color. I mean, you could see all the old white paint still underneath of it, and then it had some tan, like LP siding, and then it had this like green, Crayola green trim, and that was all flaking off too. But yeah, it had all kinds of
My
stuff
wife
going
knows
on.
what LP siding is. I'm impressed. That's very impressive.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of your wife, I mean, what a powerful story, because you just answered probably 5 questions that people have written into me about. Probably probably twice that, concerning folks that find themselves in these jobs where they do enough to keep from getting fired, and of course they pay enough, you know, from quitting. You know the deal. But there's a lot of people wondering, good night, how do I do this? Y'all did it with a bunch of kids in tow. As you were saying a moment ago, they were what, 9, 7, and 6, and then now you have 3 more. Faith, I got to know, because usually it's the women reaching out to me. Let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
Joel Salatin basically says over and over and over, we have a homesteading tsunami. Now, you guys have been at this much longer than the tsunami ever came to shore. And the biggest person that's usually having a problem with this is typically the mom in these things. How did you do it? How are you able to go through this where there seemed a great deal of uncertainty? And additionally, what advice would you give to the other ladies out there that have all this, it seems, a lot of fear concerning making these big moves?
Well, I always say to people, like, I think sometimes you're holding on to something that you know, it's like this safety thing, right? And you're like, I know I have this and my life is good right now, right here, right? So it's so hard to let go of that. But sometimes you got to let go of something good to have something great. you know. And it's just like, you just do have to just take that leap of faith. And if, especially if your husband is willing to do that, definitely to go with that, because you don't know where that adventure is going to lead. And you know, even if it flops, even if it's a total disaster, you still had the adventure. You know, you can always go back to Normalville. Like, you can always go be in an apartment or be somewhere, you know, in a little development and go back to normal life. You know, even if it fails, what do you have to lose? I mean, you know, we were really at a place where we had nothing to lose, because we were already losing everything. We couldn't afford, we were just watching our savings dwindle month after month. And his friend was like, you just can't do this. You're just going to be totally bankrupt and you're going to have nothing. So he was like, take what you have, the savings that you have, and go. How long can you live on that? And we had maybe about 6 months, like a lump that we could have squeaked by on. But the Lord was good and provided you work within 2 weeks.
Yeah, and the greater factor for me that really made my logical decision, I'm like, okay, if we stay here and I have a successful business, right, and we do all this, I'm like, what are the prospects for my sons? I had 3 at the time. Will they be able to buy property? Will they be able to do this? I'm being taxed into oblivion. I have skyrocketing insurance premiums, and I'm trying to compete with all these other mafia companies that are breaking all the rules, and they don't have the type of insurance I have, and I'm competing with a bunch of crooks, and I'm playing by all the rules and paying all these taxes, and I'm like, there's no long-term perspective prospects here, you know. So if I want to put us in a better position and put them in a position to succeed, you know. Regarding preparedness, right? Success is where preparation and opportunity meet. And I don't think that gets talked about enough in the preparation world. You know, that was one of the driving factors that said, you know, here's why we have to do this. It wasn't for anything short term. It was like the 10-year plan. Right. Like, you know, these boys are going to grow up, and in 10 to 15 years.
What do they have here?
Right.
Right.
And so that was a great motivator for me. And, you know, that would be one of my recommendations is like, hey, just look a little bit past the end of the week and look long term and really consider your current situation and the potential possibility for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we were very isolated up there too. And we had lots of family, all of our family, and we had church family. But as far as like socially, really, we were pretty different. I mean, we were very different. We didn't really fit in the you know, it was like, it really just didn't fit. So even like at our church, I was the only stay-at-home mom. I was the only one homeschooling. So that was just a very lonely, isolated kind of life. I mean, you could rub shoulders on Sundays or Wednesdays, but really everybody was doing a different life. And the same with our family. We were just kind of like the black sheep. They loved us. We loved them very much. But we were just doing, we wanted to do life really different. I mean, we really weren't doing it that different, other than we had some goats and chickens and stuff that made us strange enough. But we really wanted to do it different, you know. And when we got down here and we got to that little farmhouse, you know, the kids, they just blossomed. I mean, they could just, you know, run across the field to the neighbors and go get eggs from her. And then, you know, they could play in a mud puddle all day with a hose. And there's cows in the backyard, you know, the neighbors behind us, they had cows. So I had pictures of them, you know, with the cows. And they were just free to just, you know, run out the door. And they couldn't do that up north. And it was in that rental house that our neighbor brought us a flat of fresh figs. That's true. And I had never had a fresh fig. No, we had fig Newtons. Yeah. And so the ramifications of that are I now have 140 varieties of fig trees and about, you know, 300 or so other trees. But that one gift from a neighbor, she was an older widow lady, did something in my brain that changed me, and that has impacted us.
Well, clearly, I mean, you know, what's really so awesome, and folks, I recommend everybody out there to go check out their YouTube channel and go subscribe, because you're going to be glad you did. I've been binge watching, and the progression, it's kind of cool when you go to a channel and you see some of their early videos when the boys were little, when they first got there. And then I saw the young man just a moment ago. I think he's your oldest.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm like, okay, clearly he isn't some little Marty like we see running around here that doesn't know whether he's a boy or a girl. And clearly there's a lot of troubled people out there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool to see the progression that your kids have made in what I've been able to see online. But I got to know, when you made that transition going, I mean, clearly when you made that transition from where you were to where you are, obviously the level of bravery is on another level. It's like you went, I'm just floored that you went there basically with nothing more than change in your pocket for the most part.
Pretty much.
Nothing, yeah.
I mean, that is inspiring in so many different ways, but to do it, it's one thing to do it as adults, but you got kids in tow and you still made it happen, which is absolutely astonishing. And I would encourage you, though, because I know you guys have felt like a black sheep typically, you know, in the circles you ran in back there. But what you're going to find out with a lot of these gatherings, homestead gatherings, not preparedness gatherings so much, but more homestead gatherings, that, believe it or not, there are a number, maybe not stories quite as harrowing as yours, but you'll find that all these other people, whenever you go to these gatherings, they all feel like they're outliers in the communities they currently belong in. So it's like, it's almost like a homecoming where we congregate, where it's almost like the Isle of Misfit Toys on that New Year, you know.
Yeah.
We're a couple of misfit toys. Okay. You guys are supposed to harmonize with me on that.
You know what? You know what's kind of fascinating about having 3 young children in tow is people ask us all the time, like, how do you do this? How do you run the cows? How do you have all these animals? How do you do? We don't. We don't do it. The boys do it. You know, we would not and could not be able to do it without them. And that's why they molded and shaped us as much as we molded and shaped them, you know, because of growing up and because of my own bad decisions and missing out on everything that my dad had to teach me and neglecting that, I decided to, in turn, whenever my boys had an interest in anything, I was explaining this. They just bought an F-350 last night for the cattle business so they could haul around these 2,000-pound bulls and whatnot. And one of our great friends who's a local homesteader here, he's a mechanic, so he went with us. And I said, you know, and he's got 2 young daughters, and we were talking, and I was like, well, look, this is the way I did it with our boys. If they had an interest in something, if it was mechanical or, you know, automotive, I said, okay, you want to do that? I'll buy you all the stuff for it, and I'll buy you all the tools, and I want you to do it. And so they would just like scour YouTube and just like inhale all these YouTube videos. And I mean, the amount of information that they would absorb was incredible. But then they would go and do it to the point where
it would make you nervous with them. With the
well,
tools.
of course. I mean, and I think that's part. I
Yeah.
think part of the key to success is if you're not afraid, like if you're not afraid of what your children are doing, that they're going to like really hurt themselves, then you're not really letting them do enough. You know what I mean? Because, you know, as the parent, you should want to protect your children and you should want to keep them safe. But if you're not, when they're doing something like renting a 22-foot trailer and driving your John Deere, your $20,000 John Deere tractor, and then driving an hour to brush hog some guy's field,
to load it and unload
it.
it.
And I'm just like, oh boy. And I just, you know, I just was there when they strapped it down. I said, I'm going to make sure it's safe and let them do it. And they made it back the same day and they're still alive. But now, because of that, whether it's plumbing, electrical, carpentry, or just general maintenance, like I don't even do any of that stuff because they are far more proficient at it than I am.
They've had the time to study it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it actually, so that's one thing that society has lost, in the sense of, we coddle our kids and we make them vidiots, oh, well, Johnny's got his Game Boy, and he's like, no, 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 and because of that, we've stunted all their potential, their growth, their prospects and everything, versus giving them the freedom and the liberty to learn all those things and facilitating it with tools and time.
And I do remember that early on, we didn't have a whole lot of extra money, but
That's funny.
But maybe into the second year, they worked with like hammers and nails and like very basic tools, pallets, free pallets. We would go into town
Caveman.
and like pick up a bunch of pallets, and they'd pull them all apart and build stuff. And they learned how to like pound in their first T-post and build a little chicken coop and do little things like that. But maybe into the second year, like you started maybe once a year for like a birthday or something, you would just take them to Home Depot or to Lowe's, and you would say, okay, we're gonna pick out some tools. We're gonna go tool shopping, and oh boy, it was like Christmas. It was like tool Christmas, and they would come home with these new power tools and things, and they would just get after it and see, what kind of projects they could do with these tools.
Well, that is so awesome, because they're clearly not on a soy diet at all, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I gotta ask you, TD, because you said a couple of things in the beginning of this. Look, oh my goodness, man, I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 and a part 3 to this, because you said a few things that are like dog whistles to me.
Okay.
One thing was Prussian education. The next thing was strategic relocation. And there's a couple of other things that I've heard you say before that I'm like, there is no way on earth I could have this much overlap with these folks, because now I'll get into that in a minute. But before I do, I got to ask y'all, because I ask everybody this that comes from, usually not in an interview, but everybody that comes from back east to out west and the south, or whatever the case may be, of all the different foods back there, what do you miss the most that you can't get in Texas?
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're like the diversity of food. Okay, we are definitely in like
food desert.
I see.
Yes,
See, I was trying to like say like white bread USA, but then I was like, oh, can't say that. I'm on YouTube,
No,
somebody's gonna get offended, But yeah, the diversity of food up there. I mean, you could have real
Italian food.
Yes.
Real whatever kind of food, fill in the blank that you want.
The breads, the pizzas.
Now we do have authentic Mexican food. We have a
we do
lot
have
of Mexican food down here, so you who doesn't love that? But
most of it, I would say, is like real pizza and the real Italian foods and Italian bread. And
same things I miss. Things I miss. I mean, a cheesesteak, a hoagie.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
Pizza where you got that salt air, in the bread.
Yeah.
And you can't replicate that out there.
Nope, that's true.
So that if I was to say there's one thing that I miss back there, it is definitely, because I grew up in Pennsylvania Dutch country. Okay. So a friend of mine brought me down. I don't know if y'all know about these, but they're shoot fly pies and scrapple and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we're real familiar with Lancaster. Yeah.
Okay. So so we won't give away your previous location, but I had to ask that question because it's exactly the same answer my wife and I have.
Yeah.
Is because I mean, there's wonderful things like you can't. I remember the last time I was back there visiting an Army buddy of mine in Boston, or just outside of Boston. He said, "You want to eat some Mexican food?" I'm like, "Okay." You go to Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, you don't know Mexican food.
That's a northerner for you.
Yeah. But they know Italian food and some of the other things.
That's true.
But I want to hit on to this other thing because good night. Like I said, there's probably going to have to be a part 2 and part 3 to this because, like I said, there's a couple of dog whistles that you spoke in there that a lot of people probably wouldn't get, but I certainly do. Let's talk about, and this is a big deal to me, especially in these days. Let's talk about education. You said Prussian education. So I'm guessing, I'm just going to make a long shot here that maybe you might know a little bit about the work of a guy named John Taylor Gatto and a number of others.
Absolutely.
Maybe Charlotte Iserby, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and a number of others. Okay, so we're speaking the same language, but the audience doesn't necessarily know the language we're talking about. So you have kids, and it's every time I see your son in any of the videos he did with mom or with either one of you, I'm like, okay, this young man is clearly sharp, and he is clearly not Prussian educated. So why don't you give me a quick rundown on your philosophy in terms of how to get educated? I know part of it is that they're getting it at home. They're autodidacts. Clearly, they're working with their hands and their minds. But what is your philosophy on that?
Yeah.
So for any of y'all that aren't familiar with the works of John Taylor Gatto, I want to encourage you to watch The World's Greatest History Lesson. And
the ultimate history lesson.
Yes, the ultimate
Taylor
history.
Gatto.
Yep. And Richard Grove recorded that, and it is absolutely fabulous. And you'll get an inordinate amount of pre-postmodern history or real history. And but yeah, so our philosophy with education is all my wife. You know, she is, and it's very incredibly eclectic. And what we've learned, everybody's fear with educating their children is, oh, I'll make them retarded. And I really enjoy using the word retarded.
I wish you would stop using
because
that
I'm
word.
using it in a classical sense, right? I'm using it in a classic dictionary definition before this postmodern 1984 cultural Marxist era, when I'm just saying, you know, I'm using the word the way it was originally intended, and it has absolutely nothing to do with intellectual deficiency, you know, and I use that word on purpose to make a point. But people are so afraid, like, oh, I'll make my kids stupid. And kind of the insulting part of that is the overlying overtone of that is that the government school is doing a good job. And where we clearly see the way they manipulate the numbers and the children, and they teach absolutely non-history, critical theory, critical race theory, and all these different things to literally make our kids communist widgets in the machine. You know, so from that standpoint, if you approach it that way, there's absolutely nothing you can do educating your children. You're certainly not going to make them worse than the Prussian education system.
Right. Yep. I'm going to switch out and give this to Matt because I think Matt can do a good job.
Well, before you do that, Faith, let's hear your side, because apparently, I guess you had the homeschooling part of it. Yeah, let's hear your philosophy.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of their homeschool is just passion driven, you know, interest led learning, where, you know, they have a lot of free time because they're home. And so it's like, what are you interested in? You know, you don't even really have to ask. You can kind of just see, and then you can just go by those cues and then just let them deep dive into those things and just push them. Like, so, you know, just like how they started their businesses, you know, with the meat business that they have now, and with the construction business, it was like, yeah, I think this would be a great job. You know, they're doing some little jobs for neighbors. Okay, let's do this. Like, okay, y'all come up with a name. So some of that is, I think, as a parent, like just pushing them into that direction even more. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. Go for it. If it's a horrible idea, it's okay, because you don't know what's going to happen. Okay, that flops, but then, hey, they met the guy up the road, and then that guy, whatever, you know, fill in the blank, he owned a golf course, and then he hired them to go do whatever, and now they do sod management. You never know. You never know where that's going to lead. So so that's part of it. And then the other thing is, I do rely a lot on online education for them. So not public, but we just mainly for the past almost 2 years now, we've been using Acellus Academy. It also goes by Power Homeschool, and I think you heard that on Jack Spirko.
Jack Spirko, yeah.
It's not necessarily Christian, but I haven't found anything yet in it that's against
anti-Christian,
our beliefs. So that just really frees me up to help run the businesses, because I'm for the most part during the day, I'm like the full-time secretary. I cannot wait until Matt gets married because the girl is going to have a full-time job and I cannot wait to step out of the office. So, I mean, just trying to keep track of their calendar and their construction jobs. And I got chalkboards everywhere with lists of stuff, you know, their meat business, you know, the sawmilling business, just all of their different things that they got going on, the website business, the YouTube stuff. Yeah, they definitely need to get married soon. So if you know any girls.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a conversation we'll have to have offline. Maybe we can arrange marriage. You know, I've never done that before. So,
Yes, sir.
so clearly you two aren't big proponents of helicopter parenting because that is self-evident because I raised my son also to be an autodidact as you have.
That's awesome.
And it shows, you know, it shows massively every time I see any interaction from your kid. I'm like, dude, he's talking like he's twice his age.
That's
He has
awesome.
wisdom beyond his years. I mean, there's clearly things he's going to have to learn along the way.
Sure.
But the
Yes.
fact that you allow your kids to fail while daring greatly
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
is a massive testament to you as parents. And also, I mean, it's part of what I find so attractive about your channel is that I hear him hosting and I'm like, okay, he clearly has intelligence beyond his years. And then you had talked before about how they had, I wouldn't call it free time. It seems like free time in the way that John Taylor Gatto talked about it, where you're able to
Yep.
explore these
Exactly.
things that really, really mean something to you. And
Right.
here it is. These young men have viable businesses that are off and running right now. Can't wait to talk to
Yes.
them about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we didn't know, you know, I would say even a couple years ago, like a lot of this stuff, it just naturally develops. And the temptation is, I think, when you have teens, especially, I talk to a lot of moms that, you know, they have young boys and they say, you know, nothing's going on and they're young men, they have to work. So they're just going to have to go into town and get a job. And, you know, that temptation was definitely there at different points of like, okay, you know, and they would be frustrated, like, we're ready to make real money. Like, we want to make money, you know. And I'm like, I don't know, you know, and they tried a couple times going to work with you and doing different things but if you just trust the process and you just wait for things to progress naturally, and you know, and now they have this little construction business and you know, and they have this meat business, and it's like it's just developing. And yeah, I'm there to help it all along, but they're learning it, you know, just like they learned how to run their website business. And I helped a lot in the first year, you know, packaging things and doing things. Now I don't have to do anything, you know, now I'm just basically like, you know, helping doing different things on the website just for fun, you know, making it look nice and pretty and that kind of stuff. And you kind of troubleshoot some different things, like if there's like something with an order or something like that.
Yeah,
But
and with
the
with the construction business, that I help them price their quotes out, and I constantly have to tell them, I'm like, look, y'all are you have to charge for what you do, because and they think that some of this pricing is crazy, and I'm like,
Right.
Now look, y'all showed up right when you said you were going to. You took the time, you spent the time, and now you're turning this estimate around in a reasonable amount of time. And people got to pay for that, and people will pay for that. They appreciate it, and they have gotten kickback on one job. Now you all are awful young, you know, and but that's all part of
like men. So.
Yeah, that's all part of it. And you know, I said, look, they have so many opportunities in so many different businesses. I'm like, look, you have to charge this much because with your meat business and your website and your social media, you have plenty of potential to make a certain amount of income. So if you can't make that same amount of income in construction, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So so yeah, we talk about all, and this is that college education of how to own and operate a business. You know, and the discussion we had today was about profit margin. Like, hey, look, y'all are paying yourself $50 an hour to do this job, you know, and that's good money. And we're marking up our materials 20%, but you need to have a large portion of profit left over. This is for what? This is for the next truck you're going to buy. This is for your investments. This is to cover insurance, you know. So to just think that oh, that's magical profit and you're going to blow it. No, that's how you stay in business, you know? And so that was the Business 201 college class that we were teaching today. And how easy is it to teach when we're doing it and we're in the process?
We're all learning it together.
Yeah. And I can illustrate it.
So about that, I know you wanted to change out there, but I got to know, because this is yet another big question you guys are uniquely capable of answering. So, given what you just said, do your kids need college? Do you feel like they do?
I feel like they are totally capable of going to college and pursuing whatever they want to pursue. But I don't think any of the first three right now has shown any interest in going to college. I feel like
thank you, Lord.
So far their talents and passions are just not anywhere near anything that they would pursue in college. So I mean, I guess, yeah, part of us would be thankful because of the way that the colleges are today. A lot of the,
postmodern,
very, liberal ideals. And they know several young men who have gone off to college or are in college now, and just the trouble and the difficulty that they face socially with the college scene.
Yep,
yeah.
Debt.
Yeah. So
and your kids come back. I was just talking to a customer who owned a very successful business. He just sold it. And he was showing me his motorbikes in his real nice garage, and he's got this custom trailer. And he was like, me and my son went riding. He was like, this is the first time that we've been riding in about 8 years, and so it's really neat. We're kind of mending our relationship, and so he was like, let me tell you what happened. He's like, you know what happened? He was like, I sent him to college. He said, now here I am. I'm a moral, conservative guy. Me and my wife, that's our family, that's the way we raised him. He went to college and he came back like an insane, flaming liberal. Yeah. And and we're much outside of the paradigm of this right, left, Republican, Democrat thing, and I know you are too, Billy. And but it's I don't even think that you could calculate the risk of sending your child to college.
Right. Yeah.
That's my opinion. Now, if you were going to be a brain surgeon or something ultra technical,
right,
there's a necessity for it.
Right.
But the trades have been so demonized, and you don't want to be a grubby mechanic or a grubby electrician or a HVAC or plumber. These are the backbone of America. These are the backbone of, hey, if you learn how to be a plumber, you can plumb your own house. If you learn how to be a plumber, you can fix your clogged drain, your clogged toilet.
Well, those guys make really good money, too, when you call them out to fix things.
They make gigantic money.
And let's not forget, in Texas, people would go without eating before they would without air conditioning.
Yes. You're exactly right.
I mean, so you and me as a journeyman IBEW electrician for, coming on 30 years now, I can tell you can make a nice living. But I also have that college degree, and so does my wife. Okay. And it's not worth two dead flies when you get down to brass tacks in this lifestyle. So
that's right.
I mean, the whole notion, but these teachers, and thank God you haven't sent your kids to compulsory education, as Gatto would call it, because they constantly tell them to be a success in this world. That's what I always heard because I went through the same Prussian education. To be a success in this world, you got to go to college. So go off to the Army, get back out of the Army, get myself off to college, my wife too, and then be in a position where, thank God we didn't mount up any debt doing it. But then I'm thinking, okay, I got a military education, trade education, college education, and a farm education. And the only part the only one that has never put a dime in my pocket is my college education.
Yeah.
Not to say that it can't, but given if this is what these teachers are telling these kids, and they are, because I'm dealing with some of the fallout with some of my extended family regarding some of these absurd beliefs, in my view. These kids are, like you said, they're going to be brainwashed. They're going to be able to mountain the debt and then come out with a degree in worthlessness in most cases. Not every case, but in many cases. So, I mean, it's I'll put it this way. Based on what I heard your son say already, I'd put him up in a debate against any of the valedictorians coming from these Ivy League schools. The ones that don't know when Mark Dice goes up to him and asks him, "Hey, who fought in the War of 18 or what year was the War of 1812? And they had no idea who fought.
Sure.
What year it was.
Exactly.
Sure,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
history's lost.
Yeah. And I mean, if you free them up to most children, at least, you were talking to the bell curve, but if you free them up to pursue their own passions, like our older ones now, I don't even know how many audiobooks they've listened to over the years, and
Awesome.
most of the time they're telling us, oh yeah, we just listened to
Empires of the Rising Moon.
Empires of the Rising Moon. We just listened to, and then from that they recommended this book. So now we're listening about the history of whoever, some guy in
Bat Masterson.
Yeah, some old Texan guy that did whatever, I don't know. And that's awesome. I mean, they've listened to all kinds of historical things. It's just amazing that they're just devouring this stuff, and they got their headphones on or their earbuds in while they're out on a tractor brush hogging, and they're listening to all this
And it's
stuff.
like you're saying, autodidact, right? I think that's the biggest thing with educating your kids is your child is hungry to learn and will teach themselves. And you know what? They're going to teach themselves whether you do it or not. And if you're sending them to some government propaganda camp, they're going to learn all kind of great stuff. You put them on the yellow cheese wagon, they're going to learn some really terrible, disgusting things, and they're going to become very proficient and effective at it. And so it's all, it's a lot like this carnivore thing, it's a lot like Christianity. It's a lot like discipleship. The root word is discipline, and discipline literally drives everything, and discipline drives success, and where preparedness and opportunity meet. All of the reason it's so critical is because it's all interrelated. And that's why you have to be in control, in the sense that, I'm in control of my child's education. Well, yeah, what I do is I kind of allow them to learn at their pace. Every single one of our boys, every single child learned to read at 6 years old. No, nope.
Right.
And you know what? If they're 7 or 8, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Right. But reading, writing, math, that's the basics that we, really feel like that's if you know how to read and you know how to get information, and you can take that and go with it. You have to have some basic math. I mean, you got to be able to, work out, estimates for people, or, know how many hay bales or how much money you're going to profit if you sell that cow, and how much money you got into it, and all those different things. So, I mean, there's just some basics there that we felt are really important. And then, from there, they're going to go on and study, business stuff, and really get good and proficient at running businesses, hopefully way better than me. And, and they'll be able to grow into all of these things. So
well, it sounds like you two are raising what Thomas Jefferson referred as yeoman farmers. I mean, you guys are raising, and if we go back to that generation, some people call the World War II the greatest generation. I tend to think that it was, the one of the founding fathers.
Amen.
You look at every one of them. You look at every single one of them. What universities did they go to?
Right. Exactly.
Shoot, they were all autodidacts, especially people like Franklin.
Yeah.
And they were kind of given, if you read his biography or autobiography, you find out that just like you're doing your kids, somebody put them on the path.
Yeah.
And then at some point, they would have to learn, like Jefferson, an entire language just to read one book at that time. Right. And then here it is. It's just, look, I don't mean this offensively, because some people would mean it that way, but I don't think you guys would, is that y'all, to me, are walking anachronisms of what America used to be, and the expectations that we had for our kids, and the guidance that we gave them, that we didn't hover and helicopter over them. Yeah. Right. And here it is. They are off and running at a very young age, learning all the ropes. Of course, y'all are guiding them, saying, okay, you might want to zig when you feel like zagging here. Mm-hmm. Sure. You might want to go this way or consider this, and it shows. And it is such an honor to be able to have y'all on the Pimpcast tonight. We're going to have to come to a close here in a bit, because I got to get out here and deal with a few things with these animals. But I know your son, did you say your son Matt was going to come on for a moment? Let's get him on here, because let's see what I'm talking about.
Alrighty.
It's been such a joy to hang out with you, Faith.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. All right. I should have played a little bit of music in between because people don't like dead air. Are you Matt?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
on the screen it says Faith, but I know you're not that. Yeah, I saw you a minute ago, man. Clearly you're working out. Clearly you're all,
Yeah.
you got a little bit of testosterone in there. So don't, if you ever come out to North Carolina, maybe you want to do a class with me one of these days, don't spend much time in Asheville because every bit of testosterone you have is going to be zapped right at you. So,
Gotcha.
so tell me about, I mean, I've listened to a little bit of what you've said on YouTube and what you do there, but why don't you tell us real quick what you're doing in your world and, your businesses and how you guys are, funding things.
Well, us brothers. Oh, that's kind of funny how you can't hear yourself talk in this deal.
Yeah, you can't. It's okay though.
Okay, that's fine.
It's okay. I can hear you perfectly.
All right, good. So, us brothers started about, when we moved down here to Texas, and we started just developing different businesses, and certain ones flop, certain ones have been doing really, really well, and from a very young age, all of us brothers are best friends. We are, and we have other friends and different things like that, but we are super close, and of course we bicker and we fight sometimes or whatever, but that's just part of it. But we always told each other, like, we all agree that college wasn't for us. We saw several other kids and different things like that go to college, and what happened and what was the byproduct of that. And also we saw, I've seen a couple young Christian men go and actually stop and come back home and then have to restart up their job or whatever that they did. And then I saw other young men just finishing up they were homeschooled and then finishing up and then going out and getting a 9 to 5 and working at McDonald's and different things like that. And I said, there's more to life than that. That's the normal. That's just what every teenager does or whatever, or they go to college and then they get a 9 to 5 job or whatever to cover all the debt that they're getting into.
Yeah, go to college and then work at McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I'm like, and I was like, okay, I told myself this. I'm like, okay, so if I want to totally X out the whole college thing, let me see. Do I want to be like a brain surgeon or like a doctor or a nurse? And I'm like, no, not really. That's just not for me. I'm more of an outside, get my hands dirty type of guy, Also, I wanted to work for myself. I don't, I can work for other people, but only certain people because, there's a lot of dumb people out there, I'll say it like that. And
I like this kid, man.
they drive me crazy, but and then you have to be respectful and just kind of keep your mouth shut and be like, I told you so, kind of a little bit. So anyway, I was like, well, I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be a veterinarian. I thought about that too. And I'm like, well, those were kind of the two only things that I would really go to college for. So one by one, we just slowly started adding on businesses. And the first one was the YouTube channel. I say the YouTube channel was the key to everything because that's what funded everything from the beginning. And we started the YouTube channel about 7 years ago. And that was just us brothers. Some people think it's like our dad and our mom. They totally helped us out and everything, but it wasn't their idea. Us kids came up with it, and it was just literally just to post some swimming videos of us like swimming in a pond or whatever, or in our back swimming pool. And about 3 years ago, we actually decided we could keep this as a hobby or we could scale it into a business. And we all sat down and had a business discussion. And then also what came up too is like, do we just want to go out and get normal jobs? Do we want to go work for Dad's company that he works for? And we kind of thought about it and different things like that. And and we were like, you know what? I think we should just go ahead and no real doors opened up when we were talking about that, and we were kind of waiting on the Lord for it. Nothing really happened, so we were like, well, let's just keep pressing on. So we added 3 years ago. We started up selling different things on online on our own website. Us boys learned how to build a website on Squarespace, and we put hundreds of hours over there. So has our mom and dad working with us too over there, and just developing products and different things like that. And that's been a very good success. And then I'm very entrepreneurial, and I kind of am the head of most of all of our companies. And then my younger brother James, he's everything in between. And then Buddy, he's really, really smart at, when we get into a bind or a pickle, he's really smart at looking, not getting hyper focused on the problem and looking around and seeing how to fix the problem. So we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, so we try to work with each other as much as possible. And so anyway, so we started the website, and I think it was 2 years ago or so, we were able to save up enough money, and we went ahead and we bought a sawmill. Because we were like, well, we're definitely going to need one to start milling up our own lumber, and that's when 2020 hit and different things like that. And there was, the lumber market went through the moon, and we're like, well, I'm glad we got a sawmill. So anyway, we added on, while we were doing that, we started up a little longhorn herd. And the thing is I'm very entrepreneurial, and I knew I don't just want one stream of income coming in, because that is a very dangerous place to be, because especially with YouTube, they can, as quick as that, turn off the switch, and our sales on the website will lose 60 to 80% of sales. So I'm like, I don't want to put all my eggs in the same basket. And I said to myself, I was like, what is like one of the most valuable things? Food. And if you can produce food and sell food, it's a very, very powerful thing. You can have all the gold in the world, but you can't eat it, So I was like, if you know how to grow food efficiently and cost effectively, you got it, you win. So I was like, well, let's go ahead and start with a little longhorn herd. My neighbor across the road had some longhorns. We bought a couple of them our first year. And anyway, so they've been over there, and they've been multiplying slowly. This year, we got into the beef business, and as certain people might know or not know, longhorns are not really necessarily meant for beef. You can butcher them, but they're a leaner cow. So this year we got a low-line Hereford, and he's going to be adding on some beef to the cow once they give birth to them and then grow out. So we've been actually partnering with other farmers and swapping cows, trading cows, buying cows from them, and different things like that to provide a really good, high-quality beef to our customers, unvaccinated, so we don't have any of that garbage in there, and grass-fed. And that's been 100% of our customers. That's why they buy from us, is because they cannot trust that organic USDA approved label at Walmart anymore, because they're putting all types of junk in there that you don't know. And they might say grass fed, but it could be only grass fed for 30 days, and the rest it was on a feedlot. So anyway, we had the beef business started up, we had our sawmill business started up, getting several customers on the sawmill deal, and then mainly just milling up for ourselves. So then to add on to that was this year, we added on a construction business, and that's been really, really fun, actually. Us boys throughout the years, we've done several different projects here and there for neighbors, and learned a lot of our skills from that, from welding. One summer we welded 1,300 foot of pipe fencing for a guy, and it was a lot of fun, but we had to weld in like 105 degree weather, so it was a little hot. Plus welding, it adds like extra 20 degrees. So all these things, now looking back, it's definitely prepared all of us kids from a very young age, And I think like we walk around the farm and while we're working and different things like that, you know, we don't look at each other as our own age. I mean, I look at my brother as like a 20, 30-year-old, you know, and then, you know, we'll go to somebody else's house and then they'll be like, what's your age? And then James will be like 16 and I'm like, oh my goodness, you're actually 16. I totally forgot. So then what we did is, because I'm like, we got all this information, we know it works, we've had really good success, and I want, you know, I want to change the world, you know, just a little bit. Since we're already here and we're already passing through, mine's well, make it a better place, you know? So I was like, you know what we should do is we should make some type of course. So we went ahead and we started looking around and started just jotting down different ideas and everything. And then we came up with the men's course, the young men's course. And that took us about 2 years to do. We filmed it and different things like that, made a PDF for it, a booklet, you know, with how to set your goals, how to schedule your day, all this awesome stuff that I wish I had when I started out my career life, you know. And yeah, so we rolled that out last month.
Couple months ago.
Couple months ago. And yeah, so it's been really cool. We got live consults every Sunday. And we have like just a set amount of members on the course, you know, and then we have a private Telegram group. So then they actually send photos and they can either email us or they can just text right on there about how their week's going. And then, you know, we keep them on track too. Every Sunday we check in and be like, okay, did you accomplish your goals for this week or for this month or whatever? And it's really, really cool. And we've been seeing, it's kind of just warms my heart when I see other kids when I was their age, you know, like 4 years ago, and I see they're doing the same things I was doing, you know, and it's just really, really neat. And I'm glad I can help them out as well, you know, and pass on some of this information to them.
Well, it seems to me that you guys went straight from childhood, jumped over right at adolescence, which was a term, as your dad knows, didn't exist like 150 years ago.
Right.
And then went straight into being a man, which is exactly the way it used to be throughout history. There was no, and now we have this little phenomenon today of lifelong adolescence where people my age never really grow out of it. So it is such an awesome thing to hear that you do. Now we're going to have to bring this to a close, but I want everybody to know where they can go to support what you're doing. Tell everybody where they can find y'all.
You can find us on YouTube at The Texas Boys, our family story, and then also our website is thetexasboys.com, and you can find us over there. And we've been posting pretty brain.
Yeah, not real regularly.
Not real
because
regularly.
The boys have been very busy. Yeah. And we are on Rumble and Odyssey.
A couple times a week.
And you can check us out on all those social media platforms and subscribe. You can see all of our products and everything we have to offer on our website.
Definitely, folks, check them out, because I know for a fact that they're being suppressed like every other Patriot channel that I know of. If you have even the slightest bit of a liberty mindset, the last thing that the powers that shouldn't be want the rest of the world to find out is that there are others like us out there. So they're suppressing a number of us out there like this. So go out there, check them out. Check out their YouTube channel. You're going to be glad you did. All right, y'all. We're going to have to do a part 2 with them. There's entirely too much that we didn't cover. And until next time, y'all, stay alert, stay alive.
I'm hopeful, regardless.